following presentation is an Delmarva Studios production.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another edition of the Flat Earth Files. It's episode 30. Thanks for joining us on this Friday morning. Hope everyone had a great week. The weather here in the Mid-Atlantic region has been really good. We've had a nice warm few days, a little bit of rain, a little bit of sunshine. Got a lot of work done here around the homestead the last couple of days. Been fencing off and tilling our new 2,500 square foot garden, planting a bunch of seeds and preparing for, we have some chicks that are hatching this weekend. So very excited here on the homestead. Hope everybody, again, is doing well. Thank you all for the emails. Doing my best to catch up. I got back to a few people tonight. A few people had left their phone numbers. I reached out to a few, and some folks left messages. Again, thanks for all the positive comments. They are greatly appreciated. As we continue along in search of the truth, we have some really interesting stuff to talk about tonight. Of course, as always, we'll kick off with some emails. And then Justin Trudeau, that's right, a little Castro Jr., north of the border, has chimed in about flat earthers. And he's even using us, these flat earthers. He's citing flat earth as a reason to regulate the internet. So to all the listeners north of the border, keep your head on a swivel. These internet restrictions in places like Australia, Canada, and many of the places who don't have certain rights in place, it's really a shame, because it shouldn't even take a Bill of Rights or a declaration of anything to give people the freedom of speech. That is a God-given right. And if words hurt you, my goodness, if you're afraid of a word salad, I'm afraid what's going to happen when things really go south. People need to have a little bit thicker skin. And if something doesn't resonate with you, walk away. I never understood the people who would protest back in the 80s and the 70s, maybe even into the 90s. We had DJs. Some of them were known as shock jocks, right? They would push the envelope a bit, and people would demand to get this guy off the radio, to turn it off. We all have freedoms. And that's the thing, guys. Once you open up that can of worms, there's no going back. And we've seen it. We have seen it here. So just a few notes before we kick off the emails. Don't forget to check out our Rumble, which will be, again, I'll embed that in the show description. Our website, which I am going to do my best in the next 48 hours. Again, I'm going to post a forum on the homepage so people can leave their comments, people can have conversations, which you can do limited on the chat room, but I want a place where people can actually leave very well thought out remarks, and people can opine on them. So there you go. Look for that to come in the coming days. Make sure you bookmark the Rumble channel. We have some big things coming in April, so look for that. And again, thank you all so much for the emails. Just please be patient. I will get to everybody just as soon as I can. So I wanted to present a couple emails, and of course we keep these emails, anonymous. One person said to use their initials, which we'll get to. But the first one says, I started listening to the Fact Hunter podcast in 2020 after attempting to disprove my mother-in-law's wild Q theories. And I get asked that quite a bit. That's one of the big questions I get often in emails for that podcast is, what is your take on Q? And I always respond with, it is very much in line with Operation Trust. which was this counterintelligence operation back, it was during and at the end of the Bolshevik Revolution. It was this fake anti-Bolshevik resistance, and that's what Q is, in my opinion. Hey, maybe it started off organically. I kind of doubt it. Nothing much does, although I have some close friends who say otherwise. And nevertheless, it certainly was hijacked, and people really, it caused people to sit on their hands and do nothing. The mantra was always, stand by, patriot. There's somebody coming, and how there's a secret army that's running the White House, and Biden is in jail, and Hillary Clinton was executed, and all this JFK coming back nonsense. Now, there was some validity, like anything else. It's black. It's a gray area, right? They spread some truth in with many lies. So that's just my take on Q. But getting back to our emailer. Again, he said he'd been listening to the Fact Hunter podcast 2020 after attempting to disprove my mother-in-law's wild Q theories. I always question the moon landings and JFK, etc. After seeing the lies unfold during COVID, and my goodness, wasn't COVID quite the eye-opener for everyone, right? He says, I went on from trying to disprove her to being more awake than she has ever been. I was always taken aback by my flat earth theories on the Fact Hunter, but the listener decided last week to listen to the Flat Earth Files. Says, I went in with a skeptic, but with an open mind. I actually bought a Gleason's map to get a better perspective, and then it all started to make sense. And then he attached some pics, and he says it makes total sense, and I'm a convert. Thanks for sharing the truth. God bless you and your family. And God bless you, my brother. And again, keep your head on a swivel. The circus is in town 24/7, and they're always looking for the next big distraction, right? And he put some really cool flight paths in the globe. Just a great email, and thanks again for sharing that. The next email is from Sarah from Kansas City, and I'd like to share this email. I listen to your podcasts at work. I get so caught up in your show that the time seems to pass at a quicker pace. I am a huge fan of the show. Well, thank you very much, and I'm glad I can, help make your day go by a little quicker. She goes on to say that you touch on so many topics that I agree with and I'm curious about. It's awesome to hear people that see things the way I see them. And I think, Sarah, you, I, and many other people around the world agree. Many of our closest friends and relatives won't even take the time, right, to listen. I don't dare bring up Flat Earth to my friends or family. I know this sounds terrible, and I don't mean to sound arrogant, but I feel like some people don't have the critical thinking skills to even wrap their head around what I'm saying. And, I 100%, agree with where you're coming from, but at the same time, I do try to put myself back. There was a time where Flat Earth was something I wouldn't give the time of day. However, I'd like to say this. And again, I'm not trying to denigrate anybody, but if you didn't wake up during COVID, there may not be hope for these people, right? If you didn't catch what a gigantic hoax, what a gigantic scam. So many goals were accomplished with the wealth transfer, with crushing the middle class, decimating family trees. We've all seen the horrible stories between blood clots and so on. We won't get into that, but you get it. And how they were able to just absolutely trample our God-given rights without any accountability whatsoever. Last I checked, I don't know, maybe somebody out there can cite something and prove me wrong, but last time I've checked, nobody has been apprehended and arrested for, do we call them crimes against humanity, treason, infringement of rights. At what level do we call these things? People losing their jobs, the evil, the evil of choosing between your job and your health, specifically when you're an individual who may live paycheck to paycheck. Even it doesn't matter. Nobody in a free society, even if it's a faux free society, like ours, no human being should ever have to choose between an experimental, quote, vaccine and their livelihood. That is next level evil. Yet we still, and I'm talking about here in the States, that's where I live. So that's kind of where my norms and, my thinking comes from. How can we sit here and look in the mirror and honestly say we live in a free country with everything that we've experienced and continue to experience? And when you listen to what just a part of what Justin Trudeau has to say here after the emails, people have to understand that they are coming for your freedoms. Okay, so get back to the email. Sorry. I feel like there has to be a certain depth to a person to even broach the topic. For instance, I started the conversation with a friend and she couldn't understand the basic principle of curvature. I started slow with the boats disappearing, and I even drew a picture to explain that at a certain distance, we wouldn't be able to see because of curvature. But she just kind of stared blankly and wasn't grasping the most basic of scenarios. Then there was my mom and aunt. They just can't get past the, quote, why would they lie question. And that's why I started this podcast. That was the very first episode. And I think if people would take the time to take an entire day, download some of these YouTube videos we suggest, or, about, whether it be David Weiss, Crow Trooper 7, or these type of videos. People get so wrapped up in their daily lives, they don't really have the times to break down the truth. And it's a kind of a fork in the road. On the left side, like I've said so many times, it's up to a person to be ready to be awake. And listen, if again, I might start doing this Omegle thing, or some type of, there's some random video services where you can it goes from person to person to person, just random. Instead of like standing, I've always wanted to stand out in front of a Walmart and ask people these type of questions like, do you know how many buildings fell in New York City on 9/11? When I ask people these truther questions and see, all these people that are so quick to, look down upon flat Earth, like how many people really know how far is the sun, how far is the moon, curvature, all these basic questions, because if you don't know about the subject itself, if you're a glober and you don't know anything about the numbers, how big around, what is the radius of the Earth, etc., right? Then they should, if they're humble enough, they should take the time to listen to us, okay? And if they can prove us wrong, well, they can come on this program, or they can, if they want to make a lot of money, they can go on David Weiss's program and get paid 3 Bitcoin. But you can't. You certainly can't. And that is the big one. Why would they lie? Well, why would they lie about 9/11? Why would they lie about the JFK assassination? Why would they lie about the moon landing? Why would they lie about Oklahoma City? Why would they lie about Waco? If you go on your internet today and you put in who was held accountable, you can just put, was anybody held accountable by the FBI or ATF? And the answer is, the official stance is no. David Koresh and his people were ultimately held responsible for the travesty of that day. And that's a fact. Go check it out. That's what your computer will tell you. This is just another Ponzi scheme in the realm of this evil, evil world. Again, she says they just can't get past the why would they lie question. And, quote, this is another big one too. Why would people way smarter than you agree it's a ball? Why would you know better than them? And that goes back to COVID. There's a guy in a lab coat on my TV. He's way smarter than me, so I'm going to just roll up my sleeve and take the jab. How is there any difference between the two? A guy at NASA saying we're on a ball, or Anthony Fauci telling us that we need a jab? What's the difference? If you believe Fauci lied, why are you trusting NASA? If you believe we didn't go to the moon, why do you believe we're on a ball? It's all to hide God. That is the end game. The email goes on to say it's almost like they have an incompatible software that can't read the program. And I'm just trying to download them. That's a really great analogy. It's almost like they have incompatible software that can't read the program. I'm trying to download into them. Yeah. Maybe they need an upgrade. But again, it's truly up to them. And what I have found, not in every case, but in many cases, the older the individual is, the harder it is to reprogram, right? Somebody who's 25, they only have 20-some years of indoctrination. Somebody who's 75 and has never smelled the truth, that's quite a task when you really sit down and think about it. Sarah goes on to say, I sometimes stop and think to myself that maybe I'm wrong. What if I'm the brainwashed one that got duped? But I always keep coming back to the proofs of flat Earth. The stars are probably the biggest one for me. Spinning 1,000 miles per hour, flying around the sun at close to 67,000 miles per hour. All the while, the sun is shooting around the Milky Way at 560,000 miles per hour. All while the Milky Way hurls into the expansion of space at 1.3 million miles per hour. And she said those numbers come from Google. Yet, the stars we see from Earth never move. Every night they remain exactly as they were the night before. Exactly as they were when our ancient ancestors first mapped the stars. Why hasn't a star in Orion's belt went out? Why hasn't a new star appeared in the middle of the Big Dipper? They tell us stars are born and stars go out. But why nothing than we notice with the naked eye? And since stars are different distances and different sizes, why do they all appear the same size? Of course, some brighter than others. And what are shooting stars? So many questions. I've listened to a podcast where David Weiss, she said she's a big fan and loves the Flat Earth app, which we have, and it's really cool. You get a short video during the weekdays and a little bit of a longer video during the weekends. It's well worth it to me for $2.99 or $3.99, whatever it is. But Dave debated a couple of guys, and they had a smarty pants, arrogant comeback to every single thing Dave did. And the podcast was on Spotify, the home of who? Joe Rogan, right? And it's labeled, quote, Flat Earth versus Science, a physicist, a fighter pilot, and two flat earthers. A Michael Sartain podcast. And that's interesting how, unfortunately, Spotify has become just another agent of the three-letter agencies. You know what I mean? I've had podcasts, my other side, The Fact Hunter, get taken off. And I've had many other people reach out to me and tell me the same, other podcasters, and then they push this kind of crap. She goes on to say that I wonder if you or one of your guests might be able to dismantle their arguments. I'm not knowledgeable enough about the context they spoke on to do it myself. I'd love to hear another pilot or physicist rebuttal their statements, if possible. And the next sentence is one that resonates with a lot of people. She says, the realization of flat Earth has definitely brought me closer to God. I feel him now opposed to just knowing he was out there somewhere. It's personal now. Does that make sense? 100%. 100%. I say that quite often. You think that, when you're just a glober, maybe you just think, God is in another, atmosphere, just another, you know what I'm saying? But when you understand flat Earth, he is literally right above the firmament looking down at us. That's how I feel. And many other people, I get emails all the time who say the same thing. Also, I hear you ask guests what, quote, did it for them. How did they wake up? What brought them to flat Earth? She says, all my life I've been obsessed with Atlantis and Greek mythology and zodiac stuff. It was never anything I lived by, but it was a curiosity I always felt drawn to, even in my dreams. But the pyramids always told me there was something missing. Of course, I thought aliens. But the moon landing being faked was how I was able to take flat Earth seriously. I saw a Vice panel of flat earthers and globers, and I barely listened because I found it to be moronic. After I realized the moon stuff was a lie, I thought back to that video and watched it again. Then I found Eric Dubé, and it was all over. I was all in. And then she mentioned about starting a chat on the Dave's app. I'll look into that. And as I mentioned before, looking to get a forum on the homepage of our website so people can hang out there as well. And thanks us for the show. And she says it's the only thing about my workday I look forward to. And I hope to speak to you again someday too. I'd love to reach out, and even if you'd be willing to come on the podcast, you are more than welcome to. What a great email, and it is greatly appreciated. Thank you for the kind words. Thank you for your insight. So much to take out of those, these emails. People, it resonates with a lot of people. When I read an email, I'll get an email in response to that email. People say, I'm going through the same thing. My mother, my sister, even my spouse, I've been trying to explain to, and they're just not interested. And again, it goes back to, I think if they're not interested, you're going to have a really difficult time to wake people up. So there you go. So Sarah from Kansas City, thank you so much for the very kind email. Next one, gentleman says, good afternoon. I grew up in Kirkwood, Delaware, which is right around an hour north of me. And he said he was floored when he found our Truther channel, the Fact Hunter channel, and found out that I was from his old stomping grounds. He's a big Bill Cooper fan. I play a lot of classic audio on that podcast. And then he says, I've stumbled onto your Flat Earth channel. He said, weird enough, it actually showed up on my possible list, like the recommendations on his podcast, which, hey, somehow we snuck past the controllers, right? That's good stuff. And he said after a conversation with someone over little bits of Flat Earth, we picked up along the way. As a recent guest of yours stated, I'm not married to the globe. I find your format very easy to swallow, and as a truck driver, I have hours to absorb bits to look up later. Keep doing what you do. Just as I was thinking most podcasts today are junk, I'm very grateful you proved me wrong. And he says, good luck with the homestead. He's giving that a go as well. And thank you very much, my friend, for the very, very kind email. The next one. Actually, let me, that's not the one I wanted. Hang on one second. Here we go. Hello from a fellow Flat Earther. I enjoy your content. The Admiral Bird content is some of my favorite info. I also didn't know if you have seen how they are coming out with a car running on hydrogen now, all of a sudden. And he goes on to say, like it wasn't invented 30 years ago by that gentleman you've discussed that was killed at the diner in front of his brother. I wonder if they ever patented their technology back then before his death, because now they are really pushing it. It is crazy what powerful people can get away with. And if you're not familiar with what he's talking about, he's speaking of Stanley Myers. Back in, it was I think it was in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s, Stanley Meyer created a hydrogen power car, and it could run on any type of water. It could run on ocean water, distilled water, water out of your right out of the sink, and it would go forever. And anyway, he was trying to get it out there, and there's videos still on YouTube today. You can find it where there was a news story done on him. And of course, there was this, he got a phone call from two Belgian, quote unquote, Belgian businessmen that wanted to talk to him. So he and his brother met these two, quote unquote, Belgian businessmen in a diner. He took a drink of cranberry juice, and he died. He couldn't breathe. He was poisoned. He went out in the parking lot, fell to his knees, and died. And by the time his brother realized he was going around, the two quote-unquote businessmen were gone. So no doubt CIA took Stanley Myers out. By the way, in addition to that, the last year, the Tops shooting in Buffalo, New York, if you recall, the security guard who was killed that day, who was also a retired policeman, had just been featured on the local news in Buffalo. He invented a vehicle that was hydrogen powered as well, would run on water. So, this government has killed sitting presidents, on and on and on. So if you get in the way of the big companies, like I could imagine what they would do to you if you found a cure for cancer, like a legit cure for cancer. I mean, you would have a car accident the next day, the day after your press conference, because that would just destroy so many profits. So that, I kind of veered off course from his email, but if you haven't read the Stanley Myers story or the gentleman security guard at the Tops shooting from last year, you should really look into it and see what they do to people who would get in the way of big oil. He goes on to say that, anyway, I'd love to speak with you either directly or on your podcast. I've always wanted to start my own podcast, but listening to guys like Joe Rogan basically saying it's so saturated currently and doesn't think if he had to start right now, if he would have the success with how many different podcasts are out there now. Not that he's the only metric I would judge my actions by, but if you look into how many different podcasts about this content is out there, it is daunting. And I will tell you all what I told this emailer. There is a plethora. There's an unlimited amount of content for people to consume, whether it be YouTube, Rumble, the video services, podcasts, all the different there's literally millions of podcasts out there. And then, of course, people have their Netflix and Hulu and et cetera like that. But here's what I'll tell you. If you have conviction, you believe in the truth, and you can be consistent, people will be drawn to you. But you have to be patient, and you have to be consistent. And again, you have to be true in your convictions. And in some sorts, you have to be willing to put yourself out there. Like, I'm not a character. Like, I have my other programs called The Fact Hunter, but I don't hide who I am. I don't hide my name. I don't hide where I live. I try to be as real as I can. So you have to have some sort of connection with the audience. But it doesn't matter how much is out there. If you have a good product, people will stop and listen. So I encourage everybody, and I've had people over the last few months who has joined this podcast. I've encouraged them to start their own. The more voices we have out there, I think the more chances we have to getting into people's algorithms. People need to know, people need to stop listening to 8 hours of NFL podcasts. It's cool if you need a diversion. You want to put your feet up and watch a football game or a baseball game. But, if you don't understand your fundamental rights, but, X and Y guys batting average and ERA, that's an issue with me. Those kind of things are not going to set up your children and grandchildren for success. Those are distractions. Those are bread and circus, which should be consumed in small amounts. And that's just my opinion. I would never tell anybody what to do. You'll never hear me come on this podcast and say, you better not watch football. You bet. It's not me. I'm just telling you how I think and how I roll. I don't spend a lot of time on I used to. Oh, man, I used to live and bleed sports. Absolutely, I did. Goes on to say, I thought about starting a blog first and seeing if that gained any traction, but I'm a much better conversationalist than I am a writer. I just really appreciate how you deliver the material, having to do it the way you started, not as a conversation and more like a narrative is hard, but you pull it off well. Look forward to hearing from you. Thank you for the efforts that you've made in the space. And there you go. Appreciate the email. And we've actually touched back and forth a few times. The Admiral Byrd content is really fascinating, isn't it? Because there's different stories that go about it. Antarctica is really the key, because I think if you go further back enough, then you you may very well get to the firmament. But is it even too cold for humans to endure if it's so far back, right? Because the further, right, if we, most of us believe that Antarctica is the outer circle. So the further you go into the Antarctica, into the ice wall, the further away you're going to get from the sun and the extreme conditions. And I've already said there's a huge difference in temperatures between Antarctica and the Arctic. And that shouldn't be the case. And I'm talking about at their coldest times. And on equal footing on the globe, that shouldn't be the case. So that's just another hammer in your truther toolbox. So thank you very much for that email. I think that was the last one. And lastly, I will tell you, I've gotten several emails asking if they could help out financially. Possibly in the future. I have a couple ideas that I'm kicking around. I've shared them with a few individuals that I'm not really ready to go public with, but I'm really happy with the community that we have built. And maybe when it comes time to grow down the road, if folks want to pitch in, that would be great. But it's just really weird. We're in a really difficult time, and hyperinflation, and I never really felt comfortable asking people for donations, and I don't want to put my stuff behind paywalls. I was told, Rockfin might be a place where I could go and tell the truth. I thought I'd give it a shot. It would just be extra stuff, but I'm glad I got rejected because, we're in such a critical part of the timeline right now. I don't want anybody to not hear something that might resonate or change their life because of a paywall. But I want to thank everybody for reaching out. And, we have a great community. And again, I'll try to get that chat room or the forum on the front page of the website up really soon so everybody can jump in and have a really well-informed chat. Now, let's kick off the podcast. So I want to start with this. Our dear friend who is a champion of freedom north of the border, Justin Trudeau, just a freedom fighter, right? And he was so honest and loving during the scamdemic, right? He didn't trample on anybody's rights. Okay, I guess that's enough humor. But this guy came out today, and he said, Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, the government must censor internet because flat earther conspiracies are causing real problems. You can't make this stuff up, guys. It's only a matter of time before I'm sitting here in my studio, and I've got a great window to the right where I can see my apple tree, and it's a really nice view. And I just know one of these days, the NSA or the ATF or Homeland Security is just going to bust through the window. We got a flat earther, tase me, and because just, my thoughts are harming so many people. But the story goes, governments around the world must censor the internet because conspiracy theories like the flat earth theory are actually really dangerous and causing real problems in society, according to Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. According to Trudeau, who is becoming increasingly desperate for legislation that will allow him to censor the internet in Canada, people with views not approved by the government must not be allowed to discuss these views with others. I'll go ahead and play this clip. It's only about 2.5 minutes long, and you can listen for yourself. Justin Trudeau.
I remember a few years ago, I before the pandemic, before much of this, I got fascinated with the idea of flat earthers. Now, this is an entirely new phenomenon. There wasn't really any moment back in recorded history, not the ancient Greeks or the ancient Babylonians or the Incas or whoever else, who actually wondered whether the earth was actually flat or not. And Christopher Columbus, they knew the earth was round. There was no danger he was going to fall off the edge of the world. That wasn't what people worried about when he was setting off to discover the Americas or discover a shortcut to India. But recently, over the past few years, a whole bunch of people have decided that the world is flat. Now, everything we know about science, from the people we've sent to the moon, to the photos we've taken from space, to how we explain day versus night and seasons, we know that the earth is round. But there are a whole bunch of people out there who have decided that the earth is flat. And they hang out with each other, and they find different ways of proving to themselves that the earth is flat. Now, that may not seem like a very serious thing, because someone who believes the earth is flat is not going to necessarily cause tremendous harm to everyone else. But the ability to start to believe something that simply isn't true, because enough people are telling you and reinforcing that around you, actually starts creating real problems and can bring us as a society to very scary places. And that's why we're still very much trying to figure it out. How to make sure we're protecting people's freedom of speech and freedom of expression, and we're making sure that marginalized communities and people who are traditionally oppressed by majorities continue to be protected in all the ways they need to be.
There you go. Justin Trudeau, just within the last 24 hours. And notice the things he said. Christopher Columbus, he didn't fall off the edge of the earth. And we know how seasons work. They're taught in school. And some of the comments, I will tell you, are very, very interesting. First one, if Justin Trudeau said this, then I'll think the opposite. He lied us into everything about the pandemic. And you notice how he mentioned science. You could take what he just said here, this particular speech, and you can mirror it against a speech that he did about COVID. It's going to sound the same. Take out vaccines for seasons and some very few words, and it's the same mantra, okay? The next person says, to start to believe something that simply isn't true. Like the idea that a woman can become a man and a man can give birth to a child. Their woke agenda is starting to bite into us behind. And listen to this one. This one says, I've never really looked into it properly or necessarily believed it, but now I'm going to read up on it because Trudeau just spouts total lies. We know this from the last 3 years alone. So I'm going to leave. Somebody left David Weiss. Okay, good. I'll leave it at that. They dropped something in there already. Good. The next person says, probably means it's true. They seem to go to extreme lengths to control something that doesn't hurt anyone. Wow. See, by doing this, he just sent people to go research, and he's going to wake some people up. They're overplaying their hand. The next person says, remember NASA landed on the moon using 4 kilobytes of RAM. Right? The next guy, I'm starting to think the earth is flat now. This guy, this is great. I will post this in, again, the show description. And you'll see in the comments section, people are indeed waking up. Really, really good stuff. The story says key political figures in Canada agree with Trudeau and back his authoritarian plans. Of course, these guys are all a big part of the World Economic Forum. According to Black Block's reporter, the NPD leader Jagmeet Singh doesn't think the Trudeau plans to control the internet go far enough. 25 new Democratic MPs will pressure cabinet for legislation this year to regulate legal internet content. Party leader Jagmeet Singh said yesterday, regulations should include censoring misinformation, he said. But you know what? I bet they still won't touch porn, right? They'll eliminate me and David Weiss, but you can still go to your favorite porn site. That's how this evil world works. Quote, the Liberal government has not done the job of making sure platforms are following the rules and making sure hate and misinformation are not being spread, Singh told reporters. That puts the responsibility back on the government to do what it should be doing. That puts the responsibility back on the government to do what it should be doing. We are going to continue to pressure the government to do this because you, the measly citizen, you're not smart enough for yourself to understand what is true and what is false. So we are only going to allow content that goes along with our narrative because, you see, I've got guys with lab coats. I've got guys with big telescopes, right? We've got connections with NASA. We know the truth, okay? And we're not going to tolerate your silly 9/11 theories and your JFK theories and this whole flat earth nonsense. No, you're going to listen to us. That is Marxism. That is communism. And we as a citizenship are still allowing this garbage. It goes on to say the government has a responsibility to play in making sure social media platforms are adhering to proper guidelines around misinformation, around hate, and why we've been saying for a long time the responsibility to keep safe from misinformation and radicalization cannot rest in the hands of private companies, said Sings. It has to be the government taking responsibility. So Canada, and listen, the rest of the world won't be far behind, but they're not going to leave it up to YouTube and Rumble and BitChute and Twitter and Facebook to handle censorship. If they get their way, they will be the ones dictating what you see and what you hear. It's 1984. That's, Fahrenheit 451. They're just coming in with a massive torches and wiping out things that don't go along with their official narrative. Now, we're going to get into this great article that was written less than a year ago by Edward Hendry on Great Mountain Publishing entitled, Why Are the Government and Media Conspiring to Censor the Truth of the Flat Earth? So the following is actually an excerpt from The Sphere of Influence, which was a book that was published in 2019, which was, of course, prior to this Orwellian COVID-19 scamdemic and the resulting poisonous vaccines. But it is as topical today as when it was written, concealing the truth that the flat earth is the mother of all conspiracies. Now, The Sphere of Influence was a sequel to The Greatest Lie on Earth, the proof that our world is not a moving globe. It primarily focuses on the infiltration into the church. This superstitious myth of heliocentrism and how that infiltration has served to undermine the gospel. And by the way, I should say, I do get a lot of emails, a lot of parishioners and non-parishioners who, become a little frustrated with the local pastors, preachers that won't even entertain, when you can literally take some Bible verses and talk about the firmament. I think I had an emailer just within the last day or two. The preacher won't even look into the firmament. But the gospel is the entire Bible, not just some of it. The Christian belief is an all or nothing proposition. All scripture is given by inspiration of God and is profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness. God's account of his creation is part and parcel of the gospel. A person with genuine faith believes what Jesus said about both heavenly and earthly things. If I have told you earthly things, and ye not believe me, how shall ye believe if I tell you of heavenly things? If men have a misunderstanding of God's creation, they will also have a misunderstanding of who God is. And that there it goes right back to the other email, right? It all connects. If people believe in a creation that does not exist, they consequently also believe in a creator that does not exist. It is essential, therefore, to have an accurate understanding of God's creation. God did not make a movable spherical earth. If men believe in a heliocentric creation, they will necessarily believe in a heliocentric creator. A heliocentric creation does not exist. So also, a heliocentric creator does not exist. A heliocentric creator is a false god. We have been warned to avoid the preaching of false gospel. Taking a stand in support of the biblical model of a flat, stationary earth comes with it a spiritual attack and ostracization, right? We've all been ostracized from many friends and maybe even some family members for even mentioning flat earth, right? You can almost say about anything, hey, have you ever heard of this? Have you ever heard of that? And they'll say, no, what about it? And they will at least listen for a minute about a particular thing. But if you say, hey, have you ever looked at flat earth? 99% of the time, you're going to get the smack of the lips and the eye roll, right? Really? That's just a fact. And everybody listening to this podcast knows exactly what I'm talking about. Often people they're cowed into submission and are persuaded to reject God's description of his creation contained in the Bible. And pastors have actually been fired for preaching about God's flat stationary earth. For example, he even cites, right? Nate Wolf was fired from the church he had pastored for almost a decade after it was discovered that he attended a biblical flat earth conference. So this guy, a pastor for almost 10 years at a church, one of his parishioners said, hey, Pastor Wolf goes to a flat earth conference, and they fired him. He had not yet even written or preached about the flat earth with his congregation, but he was fired preemptively, apparently preventing him to do so. Many churches have made accommodation with the world system in rejecting the flat earth. The world system is scared to death about the truth of the flat earth being generally known. They will stop at nothing to keep a lid on the truth. They will characterize those who believe that the earth is flat as being crazy and even dangerous. Gary Chagrin, he views those people in a flat earth to be conspiracy-minded lunatics. He characterizes those people as being mentally unstable. Quote, a conspiracy mindset is one of the reasons why so many conspiracy thinkers cannot seem to hold down a job or maintain a marriage. That's funny because I held a job for 24 years, been married for 23. And I've been right. I think I'm like 93-1 in the last 3 years. What's the difference between a conspiracy theory and the truth? Just a couple months. It used to be, I used to joke and say about 6 months, but now it's sometimes within days, right? Sjogren recommends an article by Dr. Robert C. Newman under the catchy hip title, Evangelicals and Crackpot Science. So let's peel back the onion, shall we? Who is this Dr. Robert Newman? Well, he's a highly respected professor of the New Testament at the Biblical Theological Seminary of Hatfield, Pennsylvania. He is also director of the interdisciplinary director of the Interdisciplinary Biblical Research Institute. I do have one of those highly coveted associate's degrees in interdisciplinary studies. He holds earned degrees of Master of Divinity and Master of Sacred Theology. In the field of science, Dr. Newman received his undergraduate degree in physics from Duke University and his doctorate in theoretical astrophysics from Cornell. There's some real interesting stuff about Cornell, by the way. Go look at the guy who was in charge. Here's a rabbit hole, guys, completely off the reservation, if you will. But look at the guy who was in charge of running the COVID program at Cornell University, and then go look at go Google who was the mayor of Racine, Wisconsin, and if you look at the correlation between the two and the correlation of what Racine has to do with the powers that be, it's some mind-blowing stuff. And then you could also look what lakes are near Cornell, and then look at the back of Hunter Biden's back. Look at that tattoo. A lot of connections there, guys. Okay, so back to the story. He has done scientific research for the U.S. Weather Bureau and the Franklin Institute. Dr. Newman is a co-author of 4 books on both science and theological topics. So, what does the eminent Dr. Newman think of those who believe in a flat earth? Well, here's what Dr. Newman says. He admonishes Christians to steer clear of what he calls crackpot science, like the flat earth. He views belief in a flat earth as a danger to be avoided at all costs because it can lead to harmful cults. Like this just tremendous harmful cult here at the Flat Earth Files, right? Oh my gosh. He goes on to say that I will suggest that we also need to be aware of the dangers lurking in the attitudes and thinking that characterize crackpot science. These attitudes will cut us off from what God is actually doing in nature. They may easily lead us to crackpot exegesis of the Bible and to the sort of arrogance that starts cults. We certainly want to avoid all of these because scientism isn't a cult. COVID wasn't a cult. Are you kidding me? Continuing, Doctors Robert Carter and Jonathan Safarti, who are creation scientists and influential in the Christian community, announced that those who believe in the nonsense of flat, stationary Earth are radicals. Radicals. Radical is a loaded word that is ominously pregnant with meaning. Doctors Carter and Safarti push the idea that clearly the internet easily radicalized people. So here you are in an article from 2019. On the same day, I'm reading to you the same day that Justin Trudeau says the internet is radicalizing people. It's the same playbook. They claim that the internet is to blame for the rise of belief in a flat and stationary Earth, which they oppose. But of course, the book that William, what's his name, wrote back in 1885, he must have got that from the internet. He was radicalized on the internet back in 1885, right? And here's a big insult, another one. He says they claim that the internet is to blame for the rise of belief, again, of a flat stationary Earth, which they oppose. Quote, our only conclusion is that the internet is breeding people who have trouble thinking through important ideas. So this guy is calling us low IQ individuals who can't think for ourselves, when most of the people who support globe theory can't tell you the very basic fundamental things about heliocentrism to begin with. Okay? So with this all being said, according to Doctors Carter's and Safarti, the internet is breeding, these brain-riddled radicals who believe that the earth is flat. And then, again, that is suggesting that, something must be done about it, a la Justin Trudeau. Doctors Carter and Safarti subtly leave unsaid to the reader, but you understand what they're trying to say, what should be done about the perceived problem. But their ominous language and tone suggest to the reader that perhaps censorship may very well be in order. And if you have a pastor or a preacher that is pro-censorship, you may be in the wrong church. I go on to say, or the story goes on, the National Geographic did a documentary on those who believe in a flat earth. It seemed that the point of the documentary, which was stated repeatedly by the commentator and the orthodox scientific experts that were interviewed, was that a belief in flat earth is as dangerous of a threat to science and society. For example, during the video, the commentator, Mariana Van Zeller, interviewed flat earther Mark Sargent, who explained that very powerful interests who rule the world from behind the scenes are responsible for the heliocentric myth. And again, really started with Copernicus, who was a Jesuit agent. So he's 100% correct. Mark Sargent, 100%. Van Zeller responded by saying, "This is, for me, where I think it gets really dangerous because we're going to go back to the Dark Ages, right? Because we believe in flat Earth, we're going to forget how to start a fire, according to this knucklehead. You're essentially perpetuating ignorance by denying science." I got to pause while I clear my throat. Excuse me. You know there's a real-life implication in all of this. Van Zeller repeated the ominous warning of danger with the following closing remark in the documentary. Thousands of years of empirical scientific evidence is now being dismissed as a mere conspiracy, and that's where I think it really starts getting dangerous for all of us. And of course, Van Zeller carefully chose the word dangerous. And listen, these people, the Castros, what's his name? My goodness. Trudeau. And of course, Obama many times had brought up flat earth. They have very smart wordsmiths who bring the words together to plant the stuff in your head. So the next time you hear flat earth, you're thinking, oh, that's just silly. The message of danger was repeated during the National Geographic documentary. For example, during one vignette, James Bullock, who is an astrophysicist and also a professor and chair of physics and astronomy to the University of California at Irvine, was interviewed. And he expressed concern to the question what scientists are saying and suggesting that they're part of some massive international global conspiracy. It's really scary. The interviewer, again Van Zeller, in a concerned tone of voice, then asked the question, are they a threat to the work you do as a scientist? And of course, Dr. Bullock responded with, if, say, governments stop funding science because of some kind of anti-science or anti-intellectual feedback that they're getting from the populace, that's when it really starts getting dangerous for our civilization. Well, too bad it didn't work that way on COVID, right? Too bad we couldn't stop funding to Pfizer. So, the message here is understand that when the media conditions people, and that is the exact wording, when they condition people to believe that there is a dangerous precedence to our civilization in believing that the world is flat, the next stop, is to call for something to be done about it to address the danger, right? Such danger cannot be allowed to exist without being mitigated. A danger is a serious threat of harm, destruction, or even death. As such, the perceived danger could call for extreme measures to mitigate it. It seems that the mainstream media is promoting the theme that information about the flat earth is dangerous. They start with the premise that believing in a flat earth is insane. For example, the National Post offers this opinion of those who think the world is flat, quote, "This lunatic fringe is inflexible, tireless, and cannot be persuaded by evidence or reason. Once the media establishes that it is just bat crazy to believe in flat earth, then apply a patina of dangerousness on that ephatus of mental derangement." Now, of course, YouTube, which is owned by Google, right? They've been all over the danger train for the last, I think it really kicked off in, was it 2018 when they really started hitting the censorship? Maybe prior to that. But the mainstream media heralded and they championed the decision by YouTube to reduce recommendations, which is censorship, of flat earth videos. And YouTube started labeling videos, right? That flat earth is an archaic mindset. YouTube considered such videos to be harmful misinformation, just like all you people, including myself, who got kicked off for speaking bad about COVID. So do you see the correlation? If they're censoring something, there's a good chance you're right, right? Google stated that it would begin reducing recommendations of borderline content and content that could misinform users in harmful ways. A writer for the New York Intelligencer, Madison Kircher, stated that, quote, normalizing such ideas, such as flat earth, are dangerous. And then she goes full Stalin in saying that while she is all for squashing the spread of truly wrong-headed and potentially dangerous ideas, in the case of flat earth indoctrination, the damage has long since been done. You see, Kircher complains that YouTube is in part to blame because it did nothing to do anything to curb the spread of the lies, right? Such as flat earth. And Kircher's view is that the flat earth videos constitute dangerous indoctrination, and it should have been nipped in the bud by the censors at YouTube a long, long time ago. Caitlin Tiffany, in an article for The Verge titled, "If a Scientific Conspiracy Theory is Funny, That Doesn't Mean It's a Joke." That cryptic title, indicating that belief in a flat earth is no joke, suggests at the very least that belief in a flat earth is not harmless. And she began her analysis of the flat earth in the article by describing flat earth as an absurd but harmless theory. Quote, "It's true that the theory is so absurd as to be kind of funny, and it's fair to say that people who believe in it aren't directly endangering anyone's lives." Now, notice the qualification here. She stated that the people who believe in a flat earth aren't directly endangering anyone's lives, but she leaves open the question of whether there is this indirect danger to lives. She closes the door on that issue later in her article by quoting a statement by Matt Schminkowitz that belief in a flat earth is indeed indirectly dangerous. Now, the only qualification that Schminkowitz puts on its harmfulness is the peril of believing in a flat earth is just not as immediate as climate change denialism or those who were against vaccination. Now, I've played clips from Leonard Nimoy in the 70s saying within 20, 30 years we would have another frozen world. Never happened. Your girl Greta Thunberg, she just deleted a tweet the other day from 2018 that said in the next 5 years we'll all be doomed. Here it is 5 years later in 2023. So she deleted the tweet. It's all fear porn. It is all fear porn. Does the climate change every day? Sure it does. Is the Al Gore story real? No, of course not. We're not 5 years away from dying. That's a fact. Vaccinations, we've just everything that they champion that we've confronted over the last several years, we've been right. So why do people still think that, everything but flat earth? Now, Schminkowitz understands that the flat earth trutherism isn't as immediately dangerous as climate change denialism or the anti-vaccine backlash, but that doesn't mean it's totally harmless. He goes on to say, "I think it's important to maintain a level of concern about conspiracy theorists," he said. "I prefer truther or critical thinker, my friend, but okay. They do things that harm society as a whole, like negate or dilute scientific reason." And again, we have to leave it up to the experts, right? Who are always looking out for our best interest, right? Alex Wong, a reporter from GQ magazine, interviewed filmmaker Daniel Clark, who produced a documentary film about the flat earth entitled Behind the Curve. Clark stated that when we started making the documentary, we realized we had an opportunity to use flat earthers as an extreme example of conspiracy theorists. A little known fact that the term conspiracy theorist, which it's not really little known anymore, I think most people know the story, that the term conspiracy theorist first appeared in a CIA memo that was written to address criticism of the Warren Commission report, obviously on the assassination of JFK. And one of the strategies advocated by the CIA in that memo was to employ propaganda, assets to negate and refute the attacks of critics. And the same thing is done here. Wong even stated that there's a danger in believing in things that are not true. David Clark responded by affirming Wong's belief that those who believe in a flat earth could be dangerous. Yeah, there's a danger in taking your beliefs so far that you're willing to harm people because of them. If you can't trust anyone or trust anything, and everything is your enemy, that can manifest itself in a very dangerous way. And we've seen that all over the world in really horrible ways. It's okay to be skeptical, but you can't always start from nothing. Some in the media say the belief in a flat earth is harmless, but that is a ruse because in their next breath, they say people who believe such a thing also have a psychological imbalance that makes them question other matters of science, such as the safety and effectiveness of vaccines. Man, how many times did they refer to vaccines, right? And the validity of the use of science behind climate change. Now, and again, there are even some people who, are pro-vaccine but anti, like COVID vaccine. I'm not of that group. I'm anti-vaccine. But they have words, right? If you don't believe in vaccines, you're an anti-vaxxer. Right? If you don't believe in a certain event that happened during World War II, you're an anti-Semitic. You're this, that, and the other thing. They have terms. If you don't believe in the JFK, murder, the official narrative, you're a conspiracy theorist. These people who are at the very top of the food chain, again, they're wordsmiths. They use the government-controlled media and social media and the video outlets, all through all of the things that Edward Bernays proved during the early to mid 20th century, how easily it is to manipulate the minds of people. Okay? And again, they view those perfectly rational beliefs as deadly dangerous. They believe in a flat earth that is indicative of a person who has a dangerous thinking toward things that are deemed to believe politically incorrect. So to question established science, right, is to have a dangerous mind. For example, there's a popular YouTube channel, The Good Stuff, with more than 200,000 subscribers, posted a video ominously titled, How the Internet Made Us Believe in a Flat Earth and Put the Planet in Danger. He had this irrational, apocalyptic assessment of the danger posed by those who believe in the flat earth. And this is a little nugget from it. Believe in a flat earth is a harmless belief. What does it matter to believe in a flat earth? The same flawed psychology that fuels flat earth theory fuels anti-vaxxers and climate change denial. Outbreaks of preventable diseases have put some of the most vulnerable populations in our society in danger. Really, you should check out what happened in India and Africa with the oral polio vaccines that Bill Gates brought to those people. The delay in reducing greenhouse gas emissions has committed us to around a meter rise in sea level. This will displace millions of people and erase entire cities from the map. There are beliefs that can have very real and deadly consequences. And it's pretty cool. If you look at a picture from the Statue of Liberty from, however long ago, 100 years ago, and look at it today, same water level. What would you know? The assessment that belief that the earth is flat is deadly dangerous, right? That's what's being pushed by the mainstream media. And as you heard, the government, right? Both President Obama and Trudeau, all these people, they make sure that those people are nut jobs. And if you believe that vaccines are unsafe and ineffective and that is a myth and that man causes global warming, then you are a deadly, dangerous person. And again, if you believe the earth is flat, then you are also deadly dangerous because you are the very type of person who has broken from your conditioning And do not buy hook, line, and sinker the lies that public education and the mass media are force-feeding the population. And I'd like to add, it is not just public education. Much private education subscribes to this stuff as well. Now, belief in the flat earth is viewed by powerful interests as dangerous, right? Such dangerous thinking cannot be allowed. The described danger is not actually a danger to the public. Rather, those who control governments perceive a danger to the mind control they have orchestrated over the masses. The flat earth is the key to breaking that conditioning. Those who control the governments of the world, they have a plan to address that threat to their rule. All one needs to do is look at, many of these authoritarian regimes around the world, like the PRC, China, their re-education camps. And listen, I'm done pointing at other countries because ours have so many flaws, right? It's a matter of time before we have our little FEMA camps, etc., right? Make no mistake about it. The political liberals, like their communist brethren, are very much against free speech. And to them, the free flow of unorthodox ideas is dangerous. And I think using liberals loosely, I think you should say far progressive, those people. They perceive the flat earth as a danger to their godless science and thus to a society in general. They therefore believe that it must be stamped out. Portraying belief in a flat earth as dangerous is an ominous precursor, setting the stage for more extreme measures to address that danger, right? It's all about boiling the frogs, guys. So, why is there such an effort to crush discussion of God's creation of flat earth? Why Neil deGrasse Tyson, right? The man, the king of scientism. This is famous astrophysicist, this failed actor, and the director of the Hayden Planetarium at the Rose Center for Earth and Space in New York City, let the cat out of the bag regarding the concern of the very powerful men who rule the world when he stated, quote, "You can think the craziest thoughts you want. Go ahead and think that, but if you try to influence others, you are actually being irresponsible. And you are destabilizing the foundations of an informed democracy." So Tyson was revealing the concern of his handlers. If people became aware the earth is flat, enclosed within a firmament above, which is heaven, the abode of God, then the governments of the world would lose control of the people. People would then govern their own behavior to conform to God's commands. Then we could flush the federal government right down the toilet. They would understand that God is close by and watching, right? And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free, John 8:32, right? There would be no need for an oppressive external government. Tyson is correct. If the truth of God's creation of a flat earth became generally known, the governments of the world would lose credibility. It would destabilize the increasingly oppressive hegemony of the money powers. They cannot allow that to happen. The money powers have sprung into action against the danger that knowledge of God's flat earth poses to them. Neil deGrasse Tyson describes the general view of God in the scientific community and among the governments of the world. Quote, "God is an ever-receding pocket of scientific ignorance." But God has a response for Tyson and his ilk. "For the preaching of the cross is to them that perish foolishness, but unto us which are saved, it is the power of God. For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, and I will bring to nothing the understanding of the prudent." Okay, the scientific community is in a conspiracy with the governments. It's about money. It's about hiding God. It's about power, right? They're in a conspiracy with the governments of the world to try to put a stop to what Neil deGrasse Tyson describes as the scientific ignorance of God. Now, in essence, they aim to stamp out all belief in God, right? They think that such belief brings only dangerous ignorance. What happened in Israel the other day? No more Christianity, right? That's what they're trying to pass. It's going to go from this to flat earth to this to that to God. That's their end game. That's for their final censorship aim. What line is too far for you guys? Where do we draw the line, the actual drawing, right? The governments of the world will not tolerate the reversal of their great achievements of concealing concealing the knowledge of God from men through the science of heliocentricity. Okay, they plan on gradually, this bit by bit, step by step, clamping down on dangerous free thinkers. That's what they don't want. They don't want free thinkers who have broken from their government conditioning to discern that the earth is stationary, it's flat, God is above it, and he's ruling from his heavenly throne. H.L. Mencken explained that the most dangerous man to any government is the man who is able to think things out for himself without regard to the prevailing superstitions and taboos. That's powerful. That's truth. The most dangerous man to any government is the man who is able to think things out for himself without the regard to the prevailing superstitions and taboos. Oppressive legislation and law enforcement follow from sinful behavior. As Edmund Burke explained, men are qualified for freedom in exact proportion to their moral conduct. If the people do not control their passions, then the government must step in and do it for them. Sinful men cannot be free. Their passions forge their fetters, and that is what the money powers want. If people controlled their passions in obedience to God, then there would be no justification for oppressive legislation. That, my friends, is the whole purpose of false flag attacks. The governments, they're in a hurry to clamp down. These people are getting older. The Faucis, the Gates, the Rockefellers, all these people who are at the very top of the food chain, the Rothschilds. I think they want to see it in their generation because this has been a long, slow boil of the frog that has been expedited over the last 20 years, right? 20 plus years. I mean, it is really hyperspeed. Okay? But that is the whole purpose of the false flag attacks. Often the governments who perpetuate these attacks have the oppressive legislation already written in advance of the false flag attack, okay? I know it's going to address this, but, PNAC and all those folks were involved, had the Patriot Act written prior to 9/11. The King Soup shooting a couple years ago on March 22nd, Skull and Bones Day, they were having big trouble getting a gun bill through. It was the 19th or 20th of March. The headline of the Denver Post said that, the gun bill was dead on arrival. March 22nd happened, and guess what happened March 23rd? That bill walked right through. Let's continue. The legislation is not needed to address the attack because the attack itself was already against the law. The real reason behind the new legislation is to strip the people of their previously enjoyed freedoms. The Patriot Act is just one example. Check out a book, 9/11 Enemies, Foreign and Domestic. At this moment in the United States, the restrictions and condemnation toward belief in flat, stationary Earth is coming from the private sector. But the seemingly private mass media is so controlled by the state that it's become a virtual arm of the state. Indeed, the CIA has complete control over most of the news services. We know that. Major media outlets parrot the CIA propaganda, which in turn influences public opinion and behavior. For example, the Washington Post has developed into a virtual department of the CIA. Alex Constantine reveals, quote, former Washington Post publisher Philip Graham, believing that the function of the press was more often than not to mobilize consent for the policies of government, was one of the architects of what became a widespread practice. The use and manipulation of journalists by the CIA. Of course, everybody knows the scandal was known by its code name Operation Mockingbird. Former Washington Post reporter Carl Bernstein cites a former CIA deputy director saying, quote, "It is widely known that Phil Graham was someone you could get help from." Obviously, everyone knows that Anderson Cooper is one of the big CIA agents within there. Obviously, many more. Tucker Carlson, you can look at his bio. His story says that he tried to join the CIA but was rejected. You know, all these stories. And Tucker, again, on the world stage, when the people need a hero, they will give him one. Again, Tucker will give you some truths, but not the whole truth, okay? And they have to have a good guy, and, you know, for Team A, and they have to have another rep for the other team, just like WWF, right? Continuing on, I lost my place. Let me just back up here. Carl Bernstein, in his 1977 article for the Rolling Stone, "The CIA and the Media" recounts a briefing of members of the Senate Intelligence Committee by William Bader, a former CIA intelligence officer who was hired by the Senate to head the Senate investigation into the CIA influence into the media. Bader told the Senate committee members that his investigation uncovered a low-end estimate of 400 journalists who were CIA shills. 400. Now think about how narrowed down the media has become. All these newspapers have been bought out by Gannett. All the radio stations have been bought out by iHeart. They're all controlled by very few. And at the end of the day, it's BlackRock and Vanguard at the very, very top. Okay? I mean, we're talking reporters, top management, editors, correspondents, photographers. They're all CIA shills. The CIA influence has even reached into the book publishers, trade publications, and newsletters. Bernstein revealed that a senator who was the object of the agency's lobbying later said, quote, "From the CIA point of view, this was the highest, most sensitive covert program of all. It was a much larger part of the operational system that had been indicated." So why is the CIA so adamant that the lid be kept on their influence over the media? Well, because the media is parroting this propaganda that influences the very thoughts of the population. The media is used not to inform the people. They don't inform us, but they are a tool of control over the masses. The CIA subversion of the media has turned the idea of a free press into a charade. Thomas Jefferson once said that the man who reads nothing at all is better educated than the man who reads nothing but newspapers. Yeah, the person who doesn't pay attention to the news is certainly smarter than the guy that reads CNN all day, right? And that statement was as true today as it was back in Jefferson's day. The CIA subversion of the media is effective because it is generally not known. I think it's becoming more and more apparent, but there's still a lot of people who believe everything the guy on the TV says. The general population of the United States believes that the major media outlets are providing them with unbiased news. And we all know nothing could be further from the truth. The false belief that the news media is independent and free from government influence is why the government propaganda spewed from the major media outlets are so effective. The major media outlets are part and parcel of a mass mind control operation. That mind control is laser focused on besmirching the reputations of all who speak the truth about flat Earth and portraying them as dangerous. The media, being secretly controlled by the CIA, continually portrays belief in a flat Earth as delusional, right? It's a delusional danger to society. All one needs to do is read history to know that once an authoritarian state views a person or a group or an ideology as a danger to the state, persecution follows. Look at all those January 6 grandmas and grandpas, 900 of them locked away, right? We're in a very dangerous time. It used to be you just got censored, and we're getting to the point where they'll throw you in jail. It's becoming very ominous. You know, just the characterization of belief in a flat Earth as being a mental illness is not without its purpose, okay? In a communist country, Any disagreement with the Communist Party is viewed as a mental illness that requires a stint in a mental hospital or what? A re-education camp. Maybe that's where FEMA will come in, right? At present, Christian beliefs, which include God's creation of a stationary and flat earth, are protected, and I'm doing air quotes here for the audio folks. Well, I'm only on audio, but you get it. It's protected by the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which, again, is just, it's a one-sided contract, right? It's not really honored. But beware, the U.S. government is gnawing at the change of the Constitution. That's probably the understatement of the year. Each new war or conflagration, the 9/11 attacks, and my goodness, if this, World War III kicks off, you're going to see next level. You understand, they'll stop making cars, and a lot of things will be socialized, and there's going to be lean times in the grocery stores. That's why I preach, a lot more on my other podcast. Make sure you're preparing. Just think about how would you survive if the grocery store didn't have anything you needed. And again, some people say that's fear-mongering. It's not really. I would just rather be prepared and not need it than to need it and not have it. That's just kind of been my mindset, especially once 2020 kicked off. I realized these people were in overdrive. They were ready to move forward. And they're not even hiding it. They're not hiding their narrative anymore, which should scare the heck out of people. Okay? Step by step, inch by inch, those constitutional rights are being eroded. The shadowy money powers controlling the United States government have slowly transformed it into a socialist government. Amen to that. Virtually all of the socialist programs of the U.S. government violate the restrictions in the Constitution. Just think about how much money they send to Ukraine every single week. My goodness, the things we could do with our communities. My goodness. Do not think that the Zionists who control the U.S. government consider that violating the First Amendment rights of the citizens is any big deal. The powerful cabal holding the reins of government view the First Amendment as an impediment to its goals, rather than the supreme law of the land to be obeyed. And there you go. Really great, again, from Edward Henry and the Sphere of Influence. These will all be in the show description for you to peruse at your leisure. And again, thanks for everything, guys. Keep the emails coming. We got a busy weekend here. Keep us in your thoughts and prayers. We have some chicks hatching. We've never done that. We've always got them from farmers, but we wanted, since we have a rooster, we said, let's give it a try and do it. We have some popping out this weekend, so we're looking forward to that. Real blessed to have my daughter to see that, see how life works, and keep trudging along, trying to discern what is true and what is not, and continuing to spread the word. And I hope it resonates with you, and I hope you've enjoyed this 90 minutes that I've shared with you. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or we'd love to have you on this program, I'm ready to start scheduling more folks for April. I'm ready to go. Reach out, theflatearthfiles@gmail.com. If for some reason, somehow, I missed your email, it is not intentional. Feel free to email me back and say, hey, Knucklehead, you forgot me. I apologize. Make sure you visit the website. Hopefully, by the weekend, I'll have the forum up there. You can feel free to share your thoughts. And also, there's the speak pipe. You can leave a message to be shared with the masses if you don't have time to join us for a show. You can just leave a message like a voicemail, and you can do it on any device. It's really cool. So there you go. I think that's about it, guys. I'm going to head out of here, and got a big day tomorrow, and I hope you guys have a good Friday. And have a great weekend. I hope you have nice weather and you're able to accomplish a lot and spend a lot of time with your family, friends, and loved ones. God bless everyone. Take care. And we'll talk to you again real soon. Keep your head on a swivel. Until next time, my friends, we will see you.
You're listening to the Fact Hunter Radio Network.
Just the facts, ma'am.